This week is another double portion, beginning with Acharei Mot, which means after death. That is, after the death of Aaron's two sons, Nadab and Abihu, who perished because of their disobedience in bringing strange or profane fire before the Lord in a time and manner not their own. Look at Leviticus 6, verse 1. Now the Lord spoke to Moses after the death of the two sons of Aaron, when they offered profane fire before the Lord, and died. Following their death by fire from the Lord, Moses receives instructions for Aaron the high priest. These instructions concern how and when Aaron is to enter the Holy of Holies just one day each year. He is to make atonement for himself, the people as a whole, and the tabernacle and its contents. The instructions include carefully orchestrated rituals that Aaron must carry out before entering the Holy of Holies and drawing near to God. Now, how are these rituals performed by Aaron and the subsequent high priest on Yom Kippur, or the Day of Atonement? A shadow of the atonement provided by Messiah Yeshua. I'm Dan Cathcart, and this is the Ministries of Messiah. Yom Kippur is noted as a day of atonement, but it is also associated with judgment and death. Perhaps that is why this Torah portion opens by mentioning the deaths of Nadab and Abihu. Jewish tradition says that when a man dies, he no longer eats or drinks, neither does he enjoy any material pleasures of this world. Now, in light of this, on Yom Kippur, we do not eat or drink anything. Look at Leviticus 16, verse 29. This shall be a statute forever for you in the 7th month, on the 10th day of the month. You shall afflict your souls, and do no work at all, whether a native of your own country or a stranger who dwells among you. Afflicting one's soul is interpreted to mean complete fasting. This fasting and refraining from material pleasures is in recognition of our mortal state, where death is inevitable. And along with death comes judgment. Hebrews 9, verse 27. And as it is appointed for men to die once, but after this, the judgment. At some future date, we will stand in judgment before God and on a Yom Kippur. In the ancient times, and of course in Yeshua's day, when someone dies, they were buried wrapped in white linen. The tradition is to wear white on Yom Kippur to remind us of our mortality, and that judgment is inevitable and atonement is necessary. There's a tremendous messianic implications in Yom Kippur. So take a look at the broader context surrounding the Hebrew verse we just read. Hebrews 9, 24 through 28. For Christ has not entered the holy place made with hands, which are copies of the true, but into heaven itself, now to appear in the presence of God for us. Not that he should offer himself often, as the high priest enters the most holy place every year with blood of another. He then would have had to suffer often since the foundation of the world. But now, once at the end of the age, he has appeared to put away sin by the sacrifice of himself. And as it is appointed for men to die once, but after this the judgment. So Christ was offered once to bear the sins of many. To those who eagerly wait for him, he will appear a second time, apart from sin, for salvation. This description matches perfectly the description of the people as they await the emergence of the high priest from the temple following his entering of the Holy of Holies to appear before the Lord. Now, like the children of Israel, we eagerly await the reappearance of Yeshua, our high priest. Yom Kippur is the holiest day of the year. Holy simply means to be set apart for a divine purpose. All the feasts of the Lord are days set apart as holy, but Yom Kippur is a special, set-apart day above all others, just as the Holy of Holies in the Tabernacle is set apart from the other holy places and the holy things in the Tabernacle. Because of the special status of the holy place inside the veil, the high priest could only enter but once a year. Leviticus 16, verse 2. And the Lord said to Moses, "Tell Aaron your brother not to come at just any time into the holy place inside the veil, before the mercy seat which is on the ark, lest he die. For I will appear in the cloud above the mercy seat." At this one time each year, on Yom Kippur, we see a confluence of three things. On the holiest day, the holiest man enters the holiest place. His entering the Holy of Holies is the one event that makes atonement for all the people. Leviticus 16, verse 34. "This shall be an everlasting statute for you, to make atonement for the children of Israel, for all their sins once a year." And he did as the Lord commanded Moses. We all understand that atonement needs to be made for us. We think of atonement as simply forgiveness of sin. But in the Hebrew, it is much more than that. The Hebrew word most often translated as atonement is kafar, number 3722 in the Strong's Concordance, meaning to cover, to expiate, to appease, pardon, or reconcile. The word does imply forgiveness of sin or removal of guilt, but we see in the Hebrew a much deeper implication. Atonement also involves a purging of those things which offend God. And without this purging, we cannot approach God. Any physical thing that comes into the presence of God must be atoned for, not only us human beings, but also those physical items that come into God's presence, such as the objects and the furnishings of the sanctuary, and even the altar. Without this atonement, we would not survive in the presence of God, and would be consumed by him. Now such was the fate of Nadab and Abihu, which is another reason that this Torah portion begins with mentioning their deaths. But what is it that provides this atonement? The Torah provides a sacrificial system with the specific application of blood as both a protective covering and a purging. That is atonement. The writer of Hebrews states it very clearly. Look at Hebrews 9, verse 22. "And according to the law, almost all things are purified with blood, and without shedding of blood there is no remission." To provide and prepare for his own atonement, Aaron the high priest had to perform a series of rituals. Leviticus 16, verse 4. "He shall put the holy linen tunic and the linen trousers on his body. He shall be girded with a linen sash, and with the linen turban he shall be attired. These are holy garments. Therefore he shall wash his body in water, and put them on." For this one day when Aaron the high priest was to appear before God to make atonement for the people, he had to first bathe. Then, foregoing his normal priestly garments of the ephod and the breastplate, he puts on the pure white attire of the ordinary priest. These pure white garments represent ritual and spiritual purity. These garments did not contain the gold and gems and expensive dyes. Tradition says that these garments serve to indicate humility when he enters the presence of the Lord. Jewish burial shrouds are made of pure white linen, similar to the garments worn by the high priest on Yom Kippur. The high priest goes before the Lord, and so too do those who have died appear before the Lord. Yeshua was also adorned in white linen for his burial. Look at Matthew 27, 57 through 60. "Now when evening had come, there came a rich man from Arimathea named Joseph, who himself had also become a disciple of Jesus. This man went to Pilate and asked for the body of Jesus. Then Pilate commanded the body to be given to him. When Joseph had taken the body, he wrapped it in a clean linen cloth. He laid it in his new tomb, which he had hewn out of the rock, and rolled a large stone against the door of the tomb, and departed." The pure white linen garments also speak of Yeshua's return at the end of the age to do battle with the enemies of his people. Look at Revelation 19, 11 through 14. "I saw heaven opened, and behold, a white horse, and he who sat on him was called Faithful and True, and in righteousness he judges and makes war. His eyes were like a flame of fire, and on his head were many crowns. He had a name written that no one knew except himself. He was clothed with a robe dipped in blood, and his name was called the Word of God. And the armies in heaven, clothed in fine linen, white and clean, followed him on white horses. After donning the white garments, Aaron went through a series of blood rituals. These rituals included a unique offering of 2 goats. Look at Leviticus 16, verses 5 through 10. And he shall take from the congregation of the children of Israel 2 kids of the goats as a sin offering, and 1 ram as a burnt offering. Aaron shall offer the bull as a sin offering, which is for himself, and make atonement for himself and for his house. He shall take the 2 goats and present them before the Lord at the door of the tabernacle of meeting. Then Aaron shall cast lots for the 2 goats, 1 lot for the Lord, and the other lot for the scapegoat. And Aaron shall bring the goat on which the Lord's lot fell, and offer it as a sin offering. But the goat on which the lot fell to be the scapegoat shall be presented alive before the Lord, to make atonement upon it, and to let it go as the scapegoat into the wilderness. These 2 goats are a sin offering, but by lot only 1 would be sacrificed in the prescribed manner of the sin offering. The other goat is released and is called the scapegoat. The Hebrew word translated as scapegoat is Azazel, number 5799, a compound word from number 5795, Az, meaning a female goat, and number 235, Azal, from an Aramaic word meaning to take away. Now in English, scapegoat means someone taking blame for another. The Azazel goat symbolically takes Israel's sins and carries them away. After the high priest sacrifices the goat whose lot came up as the sin offering, he then returns to the other goat, or the scapegoat, and lays his hands upon it. Go to Leviticus 16, 21 and 22. Aaron shall lay both his hands on the head of the live goat, confess over it all the iniquities of the children of Israel, and all their transgressions concerning all their sins, putting them on the head of the goat, and shall send it away into the wilderness by the hand of a suitable man. The goat shall bear on itself all their iniquities to the uninhabited land, and he shall release the goat in the wilderness. The sins and the iniquities of Israel are laid upon this goat. Then it is taken into the wilderness to be released, taking all of Israel's sins with it. Now, according to the Mishnah and the Second Temple era practice, the Azazel goat was not simply released. They did not want this goat to wander back into Jerusalem, bringing the sins of the people with it. But they could not slaughter it in the sacrificial way either. So they came up with a unique solution. He pushed it over backwards, and it rolled down the ravine, and it did not reach halfway down the mountain before it broke into pieces. The rabbis have an interesting interpretation of the 2 goats. The first goat, the one whose lot came up for the sin offering, represents Jacob and the sons of Israel. The Azazel goat represents Esau and the nations that wage war and subjugate the people of Israel. The Azazel goat's plunge over the cliff to its death symbolizes the ultimate fall of the nations. They cite a prophecy from Zechariah. Look at Zechariah 3, verses 7 through 9. Thus says the Lord of hosts, if you will walk in my ways, and if you will keep my command, then you shall also judge my house, and likewise have charge of my courts. I will give you places to walk among these who stand here. Hear, O Joshua the high priest, you and your companions who sit before you, for they are a wondrous sign. For behold, I am bringing forth my servant, the branch. For behold, the stone that I have laid before Joshua, upon the stone are 7 eyes. Behold, I will engrave its inscription, says the Lord of hosts, and I will remove the iniquity of the land in 1 day. Now, in Christian circles, the Azazel goat is often compared to Messiah Yeshua. The Azazel goat died while bearing the sins of the people, just as Messiah bore the sins of the uncleanness of Israel, dying outside the city. This interpretation is recorded in the apocryphal epistle of Barnabas, but probably predates it. In the midst of the blood rituals of Yom Kippur, immediately following the sacrifice of the bull as a sin offering, Aaron is commanded to burn a large amount of incense when he enters the Holy of Holies. Go to Leviticus 16, 11 through 14. And Aaron shall bring the bull of the sin offering, which is for himself, and make atonement for himself and for his house, and shall kill the bull as the sin offering which is for himself. Then he shall take a censer full of burning coals of fire from the altar before the Lord, with his hands full of sweet incense, beaten fine, and bring it inside the veil. And he shall put the incense on the fire before the Lord, that the cloud of incense may cover the mercy seat which is on the testimony, lest he die. He shall take some of the blood of the bull and sprinkle it with his finger on the mercy seat on the east side, and before the mercy seat he shall sprinkle some of the blood with his finger 7 times. Now, unlike sons Nadab and Abihu, who brought strange or profane fire before the Lord, Aaron followed the instructions and retrieved a shovel full of coals from the altar. Taking it and 2 handfuls of specially prepared incense, Aaron entered the Holy of Holies. The incense would have created a thick cloud within the Holy of Holies surrounding the Ark of the Testimony. Aaron also carried the blood of the sin offering with him. He sprinkled it 7 times on the Ark, on the curtain separating the Ark and in the Holy of Holies from the rest of the inner tabernacle, and on the altar of incense. This provided the blood atonement that was necessary for the Lord to remain with the people for another year. Yeshua also accomplished atonement, but not here in the earthly tabernacle. Yeshua's perfect sacrifice secured perfect atonement in the heavenly tabernacle. Go back to Hebrews 9, verses 11 through 14. But Christ came as high priest of the good things to come, which is the greater and more perfect tabernacle, not made with hands, that is not of this creation, not with the blood of goats and calves, but with his own blood he entered the most holy place once for all, having obtained eternal redemption. For if the blood of bulls and goats and the ashes of the heifer, sprinkling the unclean, sanctifies for the purifying of the flesh, how much more shall the blood of Christ, who through the eternal Spirit offered himself without spot to God, cleanse us from dead works to serve the living God? The atonement that Yeshua provides is not only perfect, but is eternal, unlike the atonement provided by the high priest each Yom Kippur. First Fruits of Zion in Shadows of the Messiah comments, whereas the Day of Atonement rituals cleansed in regard to the sanctuary on earth, Messiah's sacrifice cleanses in regard to the eternal heavenly sanctuary. We learned from reading Hebrews chapter 9 that the Yom Kippur rituals could not make the worshiper perfect in conscience. It is only the blood of Messiah which cleanses the conscience for dead works to serve the living God. Along with the final and perfect atonement will come a final and perfect judgment. Yom Kippur is a dress rehearsal for the final judgment. The Apostle John describes the final judgment in great detail in the book of Revelation. Go to Revelation 20, 11 through 15. Then I saw a great white throne, and him who sat on it, from whose face the earth and the heavens fled away, and there was found no place for them. And I saw the dead, small and great, standing before God, and the books were opened, and another book was opened, which is the book of life. And the dead were judged according to their works, by the things which were written in the books. The sea gave up the dead who were in it, and death and Hades delivered up the dead who were in them. And they were judged, and each one according to his works. Then death and Hades were cast into the lake of fire. This is the second death. And anyone not found written in the book of life was cast into the lake of fire. Now, there is far more depth to be explored in the rituals and ceremonies of the Yom Kippur service than we can cover in our short teaching of this Torah portion. I would encourage you to study it further on your own and dig deeper into the messianic significance of this, the holiest day of the year. The rituals and ceremonies that are an integral part of the earthly Yom Kippur service are a foreshadow of the work of our Messiah, Yeshua, in the heavenly tabernacle. It is only through his death and sacrifice and the atoning ability of his blood that we can boldly approach and enter the presence of God. The Aaronic high priest enters the Holy of Holies each year in the imperfect earthly tabernacle, which is a mere shadow of the heavenly tabernacle, where Yeshua intercedes on our behalf as our perfect high priest before the throne of the Most High God. I'm Dan Cathcart from Moed Ministries International. Shalom, and be blessed. Join us on Shabbat morning at 10 a.m. for the live discussion of this teaching. All live streaming, the study questions, and a complete transcript are available on our website at moedministries.com. Blessings to you and your family.